The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah! Go Cowboys! This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw Dating, preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and broadcasting live from Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star.
It's Tuesday. It is 4 o'clock. That means it's time for Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. Haley Sutton, Aisha Morrison, Jess Navarez here for your Tuesday slate of Cowboys Talk. Ladies, I have had a hard time these last couple of days because Sunday's game just hasn't sat right with me. Having to sit through that was pretty miserable. I'm not going to lie. It's miserable on a lot of fronts, and we'll get into that, obviously. I just want to read off a couple of stats to get us started in this one. The Cowboys' offense on Sunday, 128 passing yards, 64 rushing yards, just 10 first downs. They were 4 of 8 on third down. They averaged just 2.8 yards of gain, 6 penalties for 74 yards, 2 turnovers, just 1 touchdown. And ladies, they were outpossessed 23 minutes and 48 seconds to 36 minutes and 12 seconds. Dak Prescott playing the worst game of his career. It is close, but it was the worst game of his career. 14 of 37, pick number 15 in just 12 games. And something that I found interesting in this one as I was doing flashback on Monday, I went back and looked at Dak's game against Tampa Bay in game 1 of the season this year, nearly identical stat line. He was 14 of 29 for 134 yards and an interception in that one. That being said, I'm glad we got that out of our system, but I will open up the table with this. What is your biggest concern from Sunday's game?
I think for me, it's the offensive scheme, and not necessarily, I don't think that falls on Dak. I don't think that falls on anybody other than, is this play calling really working for the offense? Are we playing up the strengths, or are we just kind of knocking the confidence of the team? That's what worries me. Is I don't want this win, oh my goodness, this loss. I wish it was a win. We wouldn't be having to talk about this. I don't want this loss to propel them back in the confidence that they took a while to rebuild when Dak did return, because that took a while to return after Cooper Rush. So I'm concerned about the play calling. I'm concerned about the strengths of that offense not being utilized. Where was the run game? Where is the tight end versatility that we've seen work for this offense? Where is the unpredictable aspect of this offense? There's a lot of questions I have about the offensive scheme right now, and it's frustrating because there's moments within the season where you see things work and then you never see them again. So it felt like everybody was confused. It felt like no one was on the same page. And that worries me. But I also know this team is resilient, and they are more than capable of coming back from that.
For me, it's the I'm not playing. I'm sick of this. I'm over it. For me, it's the offensive line. And for me, it's the run blocking in this last couple of weeks. Obviously, TP returned from injury last week, and we saw he wasn't involved a whole bunch. So. And with this game, I felt like the pass pro was there at times, but the consistent factor, even in the Bucs game, that they couldn't run the ball. Mm-hmm. And when this team cannot run the ball effectively, you can see that it spreads out through the whole offense. It puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback. It puts a lot of pressure on the passing game in itself, and it also makes defenses be able to just drop 6 in coverage and rush 4 and go about their business. So you went against the Commanders, one of the best defense on third down. I know,
and it showed.
I know we're talking about how poorly the Cowboys played, but let's remember, they have a pretty good defense over there as well. But for me, is getting the cohesiveness of this offensive line back together and being able to run block at an efficient rate and do it well moving forward is going to be so important to this offense.
Yeah, let's talk about the offensive line for a little bit, because I want to raise my hand up. I was the one last week that said, this offensive line doesn't scare me. They got it. They got Hall of Famers left and right. Boy, was I wrong on Sunday. And it just goes to show you how one small impact, that being Tyler Biotish, one small move, one small change affects everything. To your point, I think the run game was missing because there was no run blocking. There's nothing blocking, period.
Sure.
I think what stands out to me the most about the offensive line in this game is you saw it from the opening possession for Dak Prescott. The opening snap he took, he was immediately being pressured. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like this tap dance that he was doing in the back because he didn't know, like, should I stay in the pocket? Do I have time to stay in the pocket? I don't have time to stay in the pocket. Do I roll right? Do I roll left? Oh my gosh, like here, throw it away. And then it was just from the very beginning, it was so out of sorts. And just to give you guys some context for this, Connor McGovern was in at center for Tyler Biotish. Tyler Smith was moved to left guard. Jason Peters played left tackle for the whole game. And I think that's important to note. I think that was his first full game that he had played
He was decent.
at all. Zach Martin was at right guard, of course, and then Tyron Smith over at right tackle. And this is kind of the point of the season where you kind of start to see those cracks show. I think that's kind of what just ultimately set Sunday's game into a tailspin. You had Tyron Smith, I think, struggling a little bit, just trying to stay in the rhythm, trying to forget what he's learned at left tackle and translate that over to the right side. But the positives in this is that Mike McCarthy, Jerry Jones are both very confident that you're going to get your starting center back in Tyler Biotish. And I also said this last week, and we'll get into Leighton Vander Esch later in the show, but you never know what you have until it's gone. Mm-hmm. And I think when you want to talk about being resilient, and I think faithful is another good word for this team, you get Tyler Biotish back. This is a guy who's going to allow you to get that run blocking back. He's going to allow the communication on that line pre-snap, which I think is going to be very important. You allow that to get back, and just the comfortability for Dak Prescott back there. You get your center, you get everything back in line, and then you can kind of adjust the offensive line as needed. But just from you guys, Tyler Biotish, how much of an impact is he going to be on Sunday?
Well, listening to Mike McCarthy yesterday just say that, he had a good day yesterday, still very encouraging because I didn't know how much, I'm still learning, so I didn't know how much center had a role in just the overall efficiency of even the checks, the calling out stuff, and even just the spiking the ball. I mean, it's just so important for a quarterback to get in that rhythm and be able to get into their drops comfortably. You made a fantastic point talking about how Dak never seemed comfortable. There were opportunities where he had the opportunity to check down to the tight ends in the middle of the field and stuff, and he just didn't take it. He did not see
there was no confidence.
It was his clock was very sped up, and that's something that we haven't seen from him in a while. So to your point, really think that it just kind of helps reestablish a lot of order on that offensive line, and just to get him back comfortable knowing who can hold serve at what point in time. So I think it's important for him to get back in here and for things to get rolling, because I don't know if you're going to be able to run the ball effectively without that center, because it showed.
It wasn't working.
Show didn't look like it.
I think something in... y'all are going to take your shot. Something I always talk about is the mental focus, and that usually slips in the way of penalties, right? But in this case, without your center, without that key communication that everybody was working with and they were used to, it showed. It helped contribute to the confusion. It helped contribute to the miscues and the miscommunication. So for me, getting Tyler Biotish back means you get your communication back and you get what was working right back. So, not to say that it can't work what we saw. It can work, but I think with Tyler Biotish, he brings an element of communication that just is needed. It is needed for every single person, and it's a domino effect. That O-line is a domino effect of what you see, because again, Dak was rushing. He looked panicked. I mean, Dak is said. I always pride Dak on being a guy that he does roll things off his back, and you see it in his face. There was just a look of panic that was so unsettling for me to even just watch. I can't imagine being the guys in the O-line or the tight ends or the receivers or anybody that had to be there, and that comes from the O-line. So again, Tyler Biotish to me means communication is back. Like you said, Aisha, order is restored in the O-line, and they need it bad. They need it bad.
And more power, and a little bit more power.
Yep.
McGovern really had trouble this game just with the overall power from that interior. And then obviously you had Tyler slide to left guard. And he, in fairness, let's be fair here, he's been playing left tackle almost all season. Like, it's the bouncing back and forth. It's natural he's going to sometimes have instances where his hands aren't right and stuff, because that is just hard to tap back into, I'm sure. So just getting guys kind of back where they're supposed to be, I think will help the overall offense.
And we've given them so much credit for being so versatile on that O-line and having the ability to be versatile and, you know, be able to have that muscle memory kind of reversed on the drop of a dime. But at some point, you just don't need that anymore. You need consistency. You need stability. And it's great that you can do it if you have to, but it almost feels like it's become a thing where these guys are so on their toes, it doesn't feel like there's a sense of stability for them to where they're like, oh, am I going to be on left guard? Am I going to be on right guard? What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? Put your feet on the ground, stay where you're at, focus on the best position for these guys and move forward, because it's just, there's too much going on.
Yeah, I loved last week. I think it was Connor McGovern who was asked about this last week when it came to, you know, as far as like how often do you take reps at another position, or maybe it was Biotish, but one of them, it was McGovern?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. Yeah, and they were just talking about, you know, like, oh, like 10 to 15 reps just to make sure you know, have that fresh muscle memory, as you pointed out. So I find that to be interesting. The positive here as well is you get Tyler Biotish back. You also get a Matt Farniok going into the second week of his 21-day window. And going back to your point of the stability, I think that really gives that cushion. You know, you get him in as your backup, you have a little bit more flexibility, because I think the issue is not necessarily that you're rotating the line, right? Like, you don't want to rotate the line if you don't have to, but it's out of necessity. But if you're going to do it, you want to have the correct pieces to do it, right?
Preach.
And I think when you have Matt Farniok in there, even if he doesn't ever see the field, you at least have that, you know, good backing to know that, okay, this isn't working, let's change it up, and let's change it up in a way that we feel comfortable, that we've seen doing. So Matt Farniok making his return as well. My last question for you ladies before we take break, on that offensive line, who do you want starting where? What? I know we haven't seen practice yet. I hate when your eyes get big like that because you freak me out when you do that. But what is your ideal offensive line when you're facing a guy like Tom Brady, who obviously isn't in his prime the way he used to be, but he can still make things happen? And you've got to be able to, on your side of the offensive ball, be able to combat that.
At this point, the ideal offensive line to me is going to be the one that you kind of were starting with. I know that as far as like Tyler at left tackle, McGovern at left guard, Biotish back at center, Zach Martin there at right guard, and then Tyron as your right tackle. Granted, like we've talked about Tyron, there's some issues definitely in the run game, and I think that's just because his feet, like he's like, what do I do with my feet? You know, because it's one also too. You know, Mike McCarthy talked about how different it is for him, but just that group did show signs of being able to run the ball at certain points in different. This group right here. It's not showing no signs of being able to run the ball. So at least you get back to, like you said, some stability, and guys kind of know where they're supposed to be. You have the tight ends, you mentioned them. Bring somebody over there to help out, you know, sometimes if you need it. But that's the offensive line I would go with. It's kind of like your only best option at this point, right? Like, I mean, what else?
Ding, ding, ding. No, that's the lineup I'm going with. If I have the choice. The thing about Tyron Smith is I have so much faith in this guy. And, you know, I think it goes for every single person on this team. Like, yeah, we know he switched sides of the line and all of that, but everybody needs to feel their best, and nobody played their best. So again, it's more of a confidence thing for anybody at this point. But yeah, that's the lineup I go with. That's the lineup that was working. If it wasn't broke, don't fix it. You get your guys coming back, put them back where they belong, and move on from the horrendous game that was Sunday.
On the plus side, though, Jason Peters, he played a lot of snaps. Kirsty mentioned it on Monday. She was like, why is he playing so much? When I actually went back and watched him, we've been having this whole thing like, can he play a full game? Are you sure? They're like, and he played well. He especially in pass pro on that left side. So at least you know that he can be that guy that can come in sometimes on that left tackle position, because that's the premier position. You know, Tyler's going to be dealing with a lot of the best DNs in the game. Maybe you can roll Jason Peters out there a couple plays if Tyler's having trouble there. If you need a big play and you like, I gotta have it, you know that he can play for extended snaps if you need that. And I think was good to see from him in this game moving forward.
And that's the versatility you want, because it benefits you. Pen drop.
Oh, God. I think that's the goal of what Jason Peters was brought here for.
Absolutely.
You know, just to come in, you shore up that offensive line with a big body, a guy with a lot of experience. But I mean, like, I'm pushing 30 and I'm struggling. So I can't imagine, how he's feeling at crossing that 40 threshold. So a lot of interesting things to see. Practice will resume tomorrow. So obviously we'll get the opportunity to check out how they're practicing. We did hear good news about Esch on Monday and his individual workout. He was pushing a sled at one point, got good reports there. So good to see those guys on the mend. Another guy who's on the mend and literally chomping at the bit to get back in the game, linebacker Leighton, Vander, Esch. He was our guest on Cowboys Hour last night. I encourage you guys, if you haven't watched that interview, please go do it. It was fantastic. Leighton is a fantastic guy. And after the break, we're going to get into what makes him so special as a middle linebacker and what bringing him and Jonathan Hankins back to the defense, how it makes a difference. When we come back on Girls Talk Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that 6th ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Pepsi-loving football fans, it's time we had a lesson in trash talk. And I'm not talking about that stuff that happens on the field. What I'm talking about is trash, and it's the only thing that belongs in your garbage can. No, recycling might not be as thrilling as converting a 4th and long, but next time you're thinking about throwing that Pepsi Zero Sugar bottle away, just cap it back up and pretend you're down by 6 with the recycling bin wide open. Know the difference? Make a difference. Be a team player and recycle. Visit PepsiTrashTalk.com to learn more.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
And they snap it to Prescott, who looks right. It's not there. He escapes left. He'll run for a first down.
Just like football, when it comes to crypto, it's important to have a team you can trust. With blockchain.com, I know I'm in good hands. Since 2011, they've been trusted by millions around the world to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency.
Prescott's going to run this himself. Run it up the middle, and he scores.
Whether you're new to crypto or an active trader, they've got you covered. What are you waiting for? Get started at blockchain.com.
Girls Talk Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw Dating, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. We go over to Jess.
Dak Prescott and your Dallas Cowboys are heading to Tampa Bay to take on Tom Brady and the Buccaneers in the wild card round of the 2022 NFL playoffs. Come to the Miller Lighthouse at AT&T Stadium for a free wild card watch party on Monday, January 16th. Cheer on the boys alongside the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders and Rowdy while enjoying lawn games, food trucks, music, and more. The gates open at 5:30 and kickoff is at 7:15. For more information, you can visit DallasCowboys.com/2022 playoffs.
It's going to be lit in there.
Oh, look. The watch parties at the Miller Lite Plaza, they're so fun.
I ain't never been, but it looked like it'd be lit in there.
It's a good time. I will say there was a watch party for last year's game against Tampa, Dak's return game. Easily one of my favorite games I've ever watched. That crowd was so hyped. That was Dak's first game back. People were crying. People were having like a whole thing. It was crazy. I was like, are y'all okay? Like, I get you missed him. I did too, but like, let's take a breath. It was
I don't think
all
I
that
cried.
to say.
I was sensitive though.
It was fun. The food trucks are amazing. Go to it if you get the chance.
Cool. So check it out. The Miller Lite Plaza? Miller
Lighthouse
at AT&T Stadium. Well, cool. Girlies, I am so excited. Leighton Vander Esch is coming back to the game, back to the team, back to the field, however you want to describe it. I will be honest, Leighton's a guy who I hadn't spent a lot of time getting to know, mostly because he hasn't been in the locker room the times that I'm in there. And he's similar to the safety room. He's in and he's out. So I hadn't had a chance to really get time to speak to him. But after sitting with him on Cowboys Hour yesterday, he was a phenomenal interview. He very much just kept it real without being too cocky. You know, there were some moments where, he felt a little confident about this matchup coming up, which we'll get to in a little bit, but just a really humble guy, a really cool story. He told me kind of the origin of the Wolf story because I wasn't here whenever they first drafted him. So I loved hearing that story. So again, if you guys haven't checked that out, Cowboys Hour on our YouTube page, fantastic stuff. But when you talk about a guy who is missed, and we've said this before, you never really knew how much of an impact he was making on the field until he wasn't making that impact on the field. Some more stats for you from Leighton Vander, Esch. 54 solo tackles this season. That's second on the team behind Dono, who has 70. But I think given, the amount of games that Leighton has missed, who knows where that would have been. He's got a sack and a forced fumble. And it was interesting yesterday when we spoke to him, Brad Sham asked him if there was a blitz package available for Leighton for them to ever run. And Leighton immediately said, no. Like, what do you think would happen if they let me blitz? I would go crazy. So I love that. Hopefully we'll see that one play on Monday. But regardless, guys, this is a guy on this field who makes such an impact. He has been so missed over the last couple of weeks. With him being back on the field, how does that change this defense?
Well, this linebacker core right now, personally, I feel like they're really struggling in coverage, and that is somewhere where Leighton this year really has taken, I feel like, a step forward in coverage. He's been fantastic in coverage, but his recognition is through the roof. He's played the game long enough to understand exactly what he's looking at, and when you have like a Damone Clark in there who's trying to get acclimated, Anthony Barr is a veteran, but he's not a veteran to this team and this scheme. When you have a guy that can come in there and kind of give direction and let you know where to line up. I've even seen him with the D lineman, tell him, like, hitting him on the butt, like, move over, get into your gap, stuff like that. He's still a leader on this team. He's a veteran on this team, and I think his vision and his knowledge is really missed across the defensive line. So it'll be dope to get him back.
Yeah, I think when you think of guys in terms of allowing other people to make plays and them not being the slam dunk guy, it's Micah Parsons. But what you didn't realize is it's also Leighton Vander Esch, because even just looking at his stats, he had, he had his fair number of assisted tackles, but you also just look at how impressive he's been to set up the other guys for success. Your Donovan Wilsons and everybody else. I mean, even just how imperative he's been to Damone Clark's growth within this time is so impressive to watch. Something, too, that stood out for me this season about Leighton is his tackles for loss. He is playing with a purpose and an impact, and that is something that you love to see from a guy like this who, people just have not given him enough credit these last few years since 2018, I'm going to say his rookie season. People were so quick to throw Leighton Vander Esch under the bus for a long time, and I'm so glad that, now everybody has a better appreciation for what he does bring to this defense. He's your leader of the defense. You have different ones within it, but he was missed in very many ways. His productivity on the field, but also just that boost that he's giving guys. He can diagnose things so quickly and so easily. It's come so natural to him, and I give a lot of that credit to him being bought into the Dan Quinn defensive scheme. I always go back to that, and that's what happens when your guy is bought into what you're bringing to the table, and I love that for him.
I love, too, yesterday when we were talking, he is, to your point of being like that leader on the defense, he is never afraid to, like, tell these guys, like, hey, like,
yeah.
Like, he was talking about Micah, and he's like, hey, man, like, look, we get it. Like, you're the dude. No one's taking that away from you. You're the dude. You can make those plays. Sometimes you don't need to.
You can't make every play. I'll never forget he said that.
And it was just, it's so impactful just to hear that kind of stuff and knowing that you have those leaders, because, like, let's be real. Like, sometimes it's hard to, to speak up to the guys who are, making the big plays and getting all the headlines. It's hard to tell those guys to sit down, but I think that's what makes a leader really impressive. I think that's what makes him such an impressive leader.
Yep.
Now, of course, they're facing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team that the Cowboys have yet to beat Tom Brady, 7-0 against the GOAT. And something Brad asked that I thought was a phenomenal question, but Brad asked Leighton, obviously there's no denying how good Tom Brady is as a quarterback, right? But is there ever a moment when you're facing a Tom Brady, when you're facing an Aaron Rodgers or, someone to that effect, is there ever a moment where you can feel that they are rattled by you? And I love this answer from Leighton. Jazzy, if we could play that up for me, please.
Then this year was really like my first true shot to actually play against him a good amount. And there was certain plays, and I watched the game this morning too. I went in the facility, got in the hot tub, and that was the first thing I put on my iPad was the Tampa Bay game from first thing this season, and just watching. And there's certain plays in there where I know, dude, you saw exactly what I was doing. and you went away or had to read a different side of the field. And so knowing that and seeing that and knowing that you can have an effect on him and playing the game within a game, because we're the quarterbacks of the defense, and a lot of his reads are going to come based off of the second level at the linebacker level and what we're doing and how we're controlling the field. So the more you can keep him on his toes, even if it's just a few times in big crunch time moments, that adds up and has an effect.
So you think about Micah Parsons and the way that offenses prepare to disrupt Micah Parsons in the game that he plays, but now you got Micah Parsons and a Leighton Vander Esch. And by the way, he told us that he only played 14 snaps against Tom Brady last year. So he said, not a lot, but obviously enough to make him question whether or not he was going to throw to my side or the plays that we were going to run coming through me. So when I was talking earlier about his quiet confidence, there were moments like that where he was just listen, we're not worried about the Bucs, and not in a way of they're not preparing for the Bucs in that way, not in a way that they're not taking the Bucs for granted, but it just felt, y'all know how I feel about confidence. It just felt good knowing that you're getting this guy back, you're getting a guy back who is ready to play and is ready to make an impact, and now you got Tom Brady potentially shivering in his boots a little bit, having to face a Leighton Vander Esch.
Yeah, you made such a good point. I'm glad that you pulled that clip about just the disguises and stuff like that, because Dan Quinn actually talked about this yesterday. Just how do you beat a guy like Brady? First of all, he corrected the reporter and said, first of all, I kind of looked at it like it's our defense against their offense. It's not just one person. But then also, he was they were asking him, how do you attack someone like Brady? How do you affect him? Move him off his spot, A-gap and B-gap pressure. I hope Micah is a part of that. Just disguises also in the secondary to throw off his timing and stuff. It's all the stuff that Dan Quinn's been talking about. So I'm glad that they're kind of on the same page, because Tom Brady's seen it all. He's seen it all. So Dan talked about affecting him post-snap, because pre-snap, it's not realistic you're going to get him. He going yeah, sure. Okay, I know what you're doing. He's seen everything. So just the fact that they have that mindset that you're going to have to, it's a chess match, you're going to have to get in their head is good to know moving forward.
Yeah, that's the mental side of things, to be able to get back to that defensive scheme that's confusing for offenses. That's what I want to see. That's what you need for this game. And I'm looking at Leighton Vander Esch's history against Tampa Bay, and I like it. You see some growth. Back in 2021, he only had 2 tackles during that game, and then a combined total of 9 tackles the last time they played at Tampa Bay back in September. So you love to see growth, right? And when you see Leighton Vander Esch coming back, and you know the impact he's had on that run defense, which isn't necessarily going to be the test that this Tom Brady Bucs team is going to put to you, but you also know that Leighton has that speed. When he wants to have that speed, he's speedy. And so, again, he sets people up for success, too. And I'm excited.
Yeah, Hankins coming back is huge, too.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say that.
And you could see, Leighton in his time with the Cowboys, when he has good DT play and he can play free, he is a different player. And I think that's what we really saw in the latter part of the season before he got injured, was Hankins coming in there and being able to eat up those double teams and stuff. It really allows your linebackers to not deal with offensive linemen climbing on them and stuff. So it's a trickle-down effect. So them coming back together, I think, is going to be beneficial for both of them at the same time.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about this defense, because I know that the last couple of weeks have been tough with just the performances and missing the opportunities, and it's so hard when you start out and it's so shiny and it's so new and everything, is good and you're elite and you're leading the league in sacks and the pass rush is unmatched and it's a privilege, and all of a sudden people figure it out, right? And then you're hit with some injuries, which are unfortunate, and now all of a sudden you're having to pivot. Something that I find interesting about this matchup is that they are facing an offense that doesn't produce as much as we've seen in the past.
Say that.
This is a Tampa Bay team that averages 18.4 points per game, good for 25th in the league, facing a defense that allows 20.1. On the flip side of that, the Cowboys offense scores about 27.5 points a game, third in the league, and the Buccaneers defense allows 21.1. So if we're really trying to simplify this here, I think you go back to the beginning of the season when we were relying on the defense to keep us alive. I think that's a great kind of idea to go back to, right? Allow this defense to flourish. You're getting a lot of your guys back. You're working through the kinks of it. There's obviously still some concerns, but allow the defense to do what the defense does best. And now you have an offense who has picked it up, not over the last couple of games, but throughout the end of the season with Dak's return. Now you have the offense that can supplement that once elite defense. To me, that's the game. And don't get me wrong, like Tom Brady's going to Tom Brady. It's going to come down to the fourth quarter, and he's going to have a 2-minute drill and the opportunity to succeed, just like he always does. Because
girl, don't manifest that.
Well,
I'm not saying
it's not manifesting. It's just the reality. I mean, like, who did they just beat to win the title?
Oh, the Panthers.
Yeah. What happened? What happened in that game?
Well, that's what
they were losing the whole game. It came down to the fourth quarter. Tom Brady turns up in the fourth quarter. That's whenever he finally shows up. His body's ready to go. Right? And then the last 2.5 minutes of the game, what does he do? He winds down the clock, is the GOAT for a reason, and then you win. And now all of a sudden you're the 4th seed.
Yeah, and you brought up
somehow, some way.
Yeah.
And with the first time in his career with a losing record, by the way. Like, here's the thing. I think when it comes to getting in their heads early, it's something you have to continue to pester and pester and pester. You start early. Like Leighton's talking about, you get in there early, you get in Tom Brady's face, because attacking the edges isn't going to be good enough. Tom Brady's going to get that ball in and out. You need to get in his face. I'm talking collapse that pocket, make that the goal, attack, be aggressive, be physical, because again, I mean, they're 5th in passing yards and they're 1st in passing attempts in the NFL right now for a reason. Tom Brady, yes, not the same Tom Brady we've seen in years past, but it doesn't make him any less of a threat. It's just, for me, I think what's exciting about this matchup specifically is all the talk about the cornerback situation with the Cowboys locker room. This is your time. Nashawn Wright.
That excites you?
It excites me because, what better way to restore...
I am the opposite of excited.
Well, what better way to restore confidence within that cornerback room than, hey, I can make plays on Tom Brady? Because if your D-line is doing what they need to do, getting pressure in, I don't know, and your cornerbacks are on par. You have Trayvon Diggs, you have Nashawn Wright, you have Deron Bland, making sure that those plays are being made.
Evans.
I'm not that. So
it's possible.
Well, that's contingent
because
possible. Well, yeah, that's one of the things I'm looking for in the matchup is like, is Trayvon Diggs going to travel? And if he does travel, we've seen him play well against Mike Evans. Now, the other two guys, the thing about having guys travel though, is that the other gentleman's communication got to be on point. But when you mentioned how the Bucs offense is not they're not just scoring a whole bunch. They're not a really explosive offense. However, you did see against the Panthers that if you allow them to throw the ball downfield, they will take advantage of those. And that's really because they're not getting much explosive plays. So that's giving them turnovers, giving them opportunities. They're going to try to take advantage because offensively it's been difficult for them to get really anything going consistently. So you just got the Cowboys defense in that cornerback 2 spot, which I think is going to be, I would assume is going to be Nashawn Wright, just because I felt like Dan Quinn said that he felt like he found something with them, but they're going to have to be on their P's and Q's because he's going to be looking to take advantage. That's what Brady does. That's what he does.
I agree. I think I want Nashawn to be the guy in this situation. I want him to help. I think he's still not there personally for me to feel comfortable in it. I think he just, something about him just doesn't give me that, like, oh, I feel good about it. Like when I see Trayvon out there, I know he's going to get burned once or twice because that's the reality of the position. Yep. But I feel confident in his ability to bounce back. Nashawn kind of makes me a little nervous.
Well, he did that at last game though. I felt like he had that one big play, but he bounced back and he tackled well. He had a couple of breakups. Like, beggars can't be choosers at this point. We don't know. Like, we don't know. Like, exactly. Like, he is the best option at this point, and especially for the communication factor being back there. Because not only is he, I know Xavier Rhodes was brought in. We may get to see him later. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
You
might be able to bring him in later if there is need be. But when you talk about your secondary, especially going against a Tom Brady, especially going, like, the scheme of it all has to be important. Your disguises have to be on point. And with Dan Quinn talking about some of the things that are going to be thrown at him, I am assuming that Wright would be the best guy for that because he's been here. He knows everything that they do back there. So I don't know how confident, like you said, but it's what we got.
It's what we got. It's what we got. And that's how it is. I'm happy we signed Xavier Rhodes. I know this is a guy that's bounced around over the last couple of years, but at the very least, you get a guy with some experience. I can't wait to see him at practice because that's also what I said about Trayvon Mullen, and then we saw how that went. So I'm glad. That's the one thing that I am glad about with this Washington Commanders game that I did, give credit for. They did try some stuff. Mm-hmm. I feel like there was a point where they just said, look, this just ain't it. This ain't it. It's not our day. So let's try some different things. Like there was one point, I believe, in the third quarter where Dak was just yeeting the ball down the field to Noah Brown. Like just a heave and a prayer, hoping that someone could make a play. I don't think that's something normally that you're going to do in back-to-back, downs. But I appreciate their creativity. I appreciate that we finally got to see Trayvon Mullen so that we can know that we need to keep looking.
Now you know.
Yeah, now we know. Yeah. So it's cool. So I am thankful to Mike McCarthy. I'm thankful to Dan Quinn about that. And we'll see. Like I said, practice is tomorrow, guys. So we're gonna take a look at the options.
All the things. Lord, be some safety help. Lord Jesus.
All the things. But something else that has been floating around in the football universe is Mike McCarthy's job potentially being on the line.
The nerve.
And I say that with a semi-straight face. We're going to talk about that in our final break, or after our final break, rather, here on Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that sixth ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Pepsi-loving football fans, it's time we had a lesson in trash talk. And I'm not talking about that stuff that happens on the field. What I'm talking about is trash, and it's the only thing that belongs in your garbage can. No, recycling might not be as thrilling as converting a 4th and long, but next time you're thinking about throwing that Pepsi Zero Sugar bottle away, just cap it back up and pretend you're down by 6 with the recycling bin wide open. Know the difference? Make a difference. Be a team player and recycle. Visit PepsiTrashTalk.com to learn more.
With Smoothie King's original Angel Food and new Angel Food Slim without added sugar, you no longer have to choose between treating yourself and hitting your goals this summer. You don't have to choose between great taste and feeling great. Because at Smoothie King, every blend is made with whole fruits and no syrups, so you can satisfy your cravings without compromise. The only choice you will need to make is which one is best for you. Try our classic Angel Food or the new Angel Food Slim, blended without added sugar. Smoothie King, rule the day.
Welcome back to the final few minutes of Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. We got a little breaking news, but before we get there, you got to listen to Jess.
James Wright is your 2022 Cowboys Fan of the Year. James brings the spice to every Dallas Cowboys game, and now he needs your help to take him to the Super Bowl. Vote for James to be given the ultimate title of the NFL Fan of the Year, presented by Captain Morgan, by casting your vote at NFL.com/fan of the year. Go vote for our guy, James.
Vote for Dak. Vote for James. Listen to Aisha because we got some breaking news for you guys here on Girls Talk, Boys Talk.
Yeah, Field Yates. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Yeah, he announced that the Colts have claimed center Dakota Shepley off waivers from the Cowboys, and Shepley can officially join his new team following the Super Bowl per league rules. Also, James Washington worked out with the Giants today, so let's get jiggy.
Good to see some former Cowboys. Dakota Shepley, I think, was elevated last week as well. So good for him. He's a guy who was always nice to be in the locker room, so I appreciate that.
Thanks, Matt.
We wish him well. Thanks for that news. Let's talk a little Mike McCarthy, because this is something we are obviously Mike McCarthy stands on this show.
Yes.
We enjoy Mike McCarthy. But I just want to give you guys some reasons to also enjoy Mike McCarthy before we open up this discussion. So he's got 2 years left in his contract, as we know, ladies. He's been here since 2020. He has back-to-back 12-5 win seasons. That's the first time since 94-95 that's happened. First time to have back-to-back playoff appearances since 06-07. First time since the same coach did that since 98, 99. That was Chan Gailey who did that. He's got one of the top offenses this season. And when you look at all of the things that have gone, I'm going to use the word wrong for lack of better terms, but all of the adversity that this team has had this year, to have a 12-5 season where you played 5 games with your backup quarterback who had 1 game under his belt. You've got your starting quarterback who's thrown 15 interceptions through 12 games and still somehow has one of the top scoring offenses in the league. The Cowboys are first in takeaways with 33 for back-to-back seasons. Last year they had 34. They are first in red zone efficiency, 71.4%. When they get in the red zone, they're going to score a touchdown. And they are third in points per game, as I mentioned. And they have a plus 10 turnover differential, good for second in the league. Now, I say all that to say people are unhappy with Mike McCarthy, and this is a day where I would love for us to be able to open the phone to callers, because I want to understand the Mike McCarthy diss. I want to understand, like, where has he gone wrong? Do you know what I mean? He's a nice enough guy. He is showing results, and I get it. Last year's playoff performance wasn't what anybody wanted. It was horrible. Yeah. I literally have videos on my phone of me crying from that game. But I just want to understand, and I would love to hear you guys' opinion just on Mike and what he's done here, because to me this is frustrating. I don't know if you guys feel that, but I was listening on the radio, them talk about it this morning, and it annoys me. So I want to open it up to you guys. Before we get there, though, I want to play Jerry Jones this morning on The Fan. He was asked if Mike were to lose, or if the Cowboys, rather, were to lose on Monday, if that would mean that Mike McCarthy's job is in jeopardy. Here's what Jerry Jones had to say.
No. I don't even want to. No. That's it. I don't need to go into all the pluses or minuses, but we're not seeing any. We're not basing. I've got a lot more to evaluate Mike McCarthy on than this playoff game.
Good for Jerry.
And when I tell y'all, the second he was asked if Mike's job was in jeopardy and he hit that no.
That's a hard no, too.
That's a no.
Right. And I want to be clear. Like, we have known Jerry to say one thing and do another thing, so I keep that in the back of my mind. But this felt much more like, are you guys kidding me that you're asking me this question right now, given what he has done? Now, I do think that the playoff picture is a really big thing for Jerry. He's obvious and been vocal in saying how badly he not only wants to win a playoff, but to win another Super Bowl. But should Mike McCarthy be under fire? Is this something that we should be talking about in Week 18, a 12-5 team going to the playoffs for the second straight season?
No.
Jerry, was that you?
Echo Jerry, no. No, here's the thing. It's a very interesting turn of events, because when Mike McCarthy was first hired, I had my biggest Dallas Cowboys fan hat on, and I was seeing things from a very emotional Dallas Cowboys fan perspective. And I didn't know much about Mike McCarthy. The only thing I knew is that playoff game where Dez caught it. That is what I knew of Mike McCarthy. That was my impression. And then, of course, reading everything everyone was saying about him beforehand. Now, what I didn't understand until this season, and having the privilege to be in the building and to talk to Mike McCarthy and talk to the players, is how much of an importance it holds for your guys to be bought into what the coaching staff is doing. And it shows the way these guys talk about their coach, and they're not going to go on and say anything bad about him. But again, all the conversations that we have in the locker room, people don't know. People don't know those conversations, and they can say anything they want. Never once have I heard anybody say anything negative about Mike McCarthy in that locker room. And in fact, they're so bought into this culture, it shows. We talk about this, that echoed vocabulary within this building because of Mike McCarthy. And even just, I will forever have so much respect for how he puts the mental health aspect in the forefront of everything for these players. The way he's dealt with injuries, the way he's tried to preserve players for the future. There's so many aspects of Mike McCarthy as a head coach that just deserve to be praised, but don't, because, a lot of people don't get to see it from that light. I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. Even with the stats you mentioned, Haley, nobody should be questioning Mike McCarthy's job, even if there's a loss on Monday. It's so outrageous to me, and it makes me roll my eyes so far back into my head.
I personally think that so many fans and so many people, I don't know if there's anything he can do other than win the ship that will make anybody happy. Like, I'm not trying to
ship.
Ship.
I heard something else. I was like, huh?
Like, all right, say what your chest
thought I said, you thought I said the
what your
back.
chest, Aisha.
You know, Jazzy blamed me the other time. Like, you was cursing. I don't be cursing on camera. But anyway, nah, man, I when you look around at it, like she said, like, just getting the opportunity to kind of see how things operate and stuff, we have no idea how hard it is to run an NFL team, to put these things together, to put the practice schedules together, to do all of this stuff. And they've seen success here. Not only has he seen success here, he's righted wrongs with his coaching staff. This coaching staff is one that he completely brought in. Then also the turnover in players. If I'm not mistaken, it was like 60% last year, like 60% the year before. So there's a lot to be juggling. And this year in particular, I come into the offseason, I was really looking at Mike McCarthy like, this is your third year. You're having a true install period, right? Like, he's finally, no COVID, none of that. And I feel like he's taken the reins and really gathered the type of men they even want to bring into the locker room and the kind of culture they want to build. So I just feel like with anyone discussing whether his job is in limbo or not, I just think there's so much pressure on anybody coaching for the Cowboys because of the playoff contention and the fact that, you know, the playoff history with the Cowboys. I don't know if it's ever going to be enough until they win multiple games. So everyone's thinking, I think a lot of people are acting off of emotion when they're saying those things.
100%. And it's one of those things, too, that you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Because if Mike McCarthy goes and wins y'all a Super Bowl this season, next season, say they lose one game, fire Mike McCarthy. Like, nobody's ever happy with what this Cowboys team and this coaching staff does, it feels like. It's act on emotions every single time there's a loss. And I get it. This last game, horrendous. We were all upset about it. But y'all, you're talking about a team that still had a chance to take the NFC as a whole with the number 1 seed going into their final game of the season. Like, stop it, please. I'm so tired of it.
It's never enough. And it's just going to be just under a microscope. They're always going to be under a microscope. It's to be expected. I'm just disappointed that we're talking about jobs and all this stuff when there's a playoff game on Sunday or Monday.
Sure. Literally.
Like, there's just so much more, and I just think that that's not the right approach to be taken right now, and I'm not a fan.
I agree. My caught me off. Aisha came with some heat there.
I know. I was like,
for that.
Dang. All right.
I will say to that, Mike was asked on yesterday, just about like the playoff history. He was asked about facing Tom Brady and how the Cowboys have yet to beat Tom Brady. And, you know, he said, like, does that add any pressure to the team? Does that add any pressure to you as a coach? And I love Mike McCarthy without hesitation said, the history of this team is not our problem. The history of our team, the history of this team is not our responsibility, nor is it our motivating factor, because the reality is, like, this is what we can do with the team that we have. So he's obviously not bothered. Jerry sounds like he's not bothered. I will leave you with this. His record in January is 5-4, 9-9 in the postseason. So he's had success winning in the postseason. And he is a perfect 1-0 in February. So we know what that means. If we can get to the Super Bowl, he's a perfect 1-0.
Chicka, chicka, yeah.
Speaking it into existence, we are Mike McCarthy stands on this podcast. Ladies, insightful conversation is always with you guys. We are going to get into more of the Tampa Bay Dallas Cowboys matchup coming up on Monday later this week. But for now, that'll do it. Thanks so much for joining us today. We will see you guys tomorrow.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!